Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Mind Movers. Today we have my Instagram crush, a mental health advocate, a writer, a former model, and someone who I just think is incredible. We connected over social media and sort of became besties online. So it is my pleasure to welcome Stina Sanders. Welcome.
Thank you. That was such a nice introduction.
Yeah. So I just want to give a bit of background on Stina for people that know that after rising to public attention by sharing your unfiltered realities behind your seemingly glamorous life, Stina has become a leading voice in the conversation of emotional well-being, social media transparency, female empowerment, and obviously the big one, relationships, which what everyone is obsessed with. You regularly speak up on topics like anxiety, trauma, therapy, and the pressures of online life. You are a therapist. Mm-hmm. You are currently undergoing a master's and then hopefully a PhD, all pending. Yes. And she's also going to be a mummy soon.
Yes.
So yay! So applause. So welcome, Stina. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
So people don't really like us sort of starting from the beginning, I guess, but I always find it interesting because I feel like it is the blood and bones who make us who we are. Mm-hmm. And I want you, because when I sort of saw you first time when I was doing my stalking, I obviously Googled you and I saw lots of articles about your personal life that you were sharing. So tell us a little bit about your background, where you came from and how you got into this work.
Oh, where do I start? So yes, I used to do, back in the day when I first started my career, I was doing PR, and then I took a hand to journalism because I love writing. Like, writing is my passion. It's where I can escape. So hence why when you do a quick online search of me, you will see a lot of therapy articles, but you'll also see some past articles, just personal experiences that I would write about. And I just loved kind of sharing life lessons or things that have touched me, and in the hope that hopefully it would resonate with someone reading it. And that was kind of, again, just something, I didn't get paid very much, but it was just something that I did on the side. And then through sort of PR, I ended up meeting a Russian investor who was starting a dating app called Huggle. And he was looking for somebody that had sort of marketing and a PR background, and sort of liked that I was in the journalist world as well. And just sort of said, would you be interested in coming on board and helping out with the PR and marketing? Yeah, sure, why not? That's what I was doing. And then we got into it. I had a co-founder as well. So we just started this business, and then ended up...
So with three of you, the founders?
So he was our investor, and then she was she was actually really the founder. But when I came on board, they sort of said, do you want to go all in on this business? And I was like, yeah, I'm sold. Like, let's do this. So again, I was co-founder, but I wasn't really. Yeah. Kind of came in at the last minute. So we did that. We grew a business from literally startup, and we did boom. We boomed in the UK. We didn't so much in the US. That was a harder market. And then in the end, we actually ended up selling our business to a company called Badoo, who actually used to own Bumble. Mm-hmm. Again, they were the investor behind that. So yeah, I had that kind of world, and I was always really interested in relationships. And it's funny, I look back now and a lot of my writing was about my relationships, my dating status, love, and obviously the kind of the underbelly of that was psychology and understanding what makes people tick, and why is that attracted to some people and not to others, and ghosting and all the terms that we all use today. And then anyway, I've sold that business, and I kind of was sort of doing PR for a bit, but I just didn't feel fulfilled. And it was actually, I was having a conversation with my own therapist at the time, and she sort of said, well, what are you interested in? You've said this and this and this. And I said, well, psychology, really. I always have found human psychology fascinating. She said, well, go and study it then and see what happens. And I thought, yeah, why not? I haven't got much to lose. I've got a good summer ahead of me. I just sold a business. So I did. And I went to study it and fell in love, and then carried on. And that's how I basically fell into therapy.
You make that sound very simple, but
it's not.
The progression of a company from nothing to sold, how many years was that?
6, I think it was.
Pretty quick.
Yeah.
So what was the premise of Huggle? Because I'd actually never heard of it.
So Huggle was nearly... Do you remember Happen, where it was like you would cross paths?
Yeah.
We never quite liked that because it was just sort of like, oh, okay, great, you happen to walk past someone. Obviously, the whole premise was that it was, being at the right place at the right time. So we were like, let's take it back and actually look at the locations and people's interests and common ground. So actually you would match on similarities, and going back to sort of shared values, which is again very important when you meet somebody. You know, if you don't have much in common, you don't really have a great starting point. So our whole sort of thing was the locations that you go to, the things that you're interested in. And that was essentially, you obviously did the whole swiping thing, but you were matching or connected with people who were similar or like-minded to you. So that was, we actually started it as a friendship app originally.
I've always said there's a need for that because I travel alone quite a lot. And sometimes, you know, like you're there for like 2-3 days and I was like, oh God, like I wish there was like an app where you could connect with people to like take you out, show you around and just have like a really nice time without a hookup. Do you see what I mean? Or like, or even like just to meet even like girls, you know, and that kind of thing. Yes, I always thought there was that niche.
You know, you've talked to loads of couples, right?
Yes.
Or people in relationships, and you know what you said about shared interests. Do you think, you know, I think when you look at couples, sometimes they're very opposite.
Yes, yeah.
And opposites attract and all that. But what is it? What basic premises do you find have to be the same? And then what other things can be opposite?
I think that's a really good question. It's very nuanced as well, the answer. I think for any relationship to sort of work and move forward, I do think you have to have shared values and shared morals. I just don't, yes, you can love Taylor Swift and then your partner can absolutely hate her. And that's fine. But I think it's like the real sort of
basic principles.
Basics, yeah. And, you know, if you're not on the same page with that, I think it's very difficult it's not to say it can't work. And yes, opposites do attract, but I think if you really scrape it down, you find actually they're very similar in a lot of ways. And actually, even to go even further psychologically, they often probably have very similar upbringings too. You know, they might have come from very similar, like I said, backgrounds. Maybe one partner's household was chaotic and theirs was too. It's again, it's what we feel safe in, and the familiarity is the safe, what we feel safe.
Was there a personal experience that sparked your passion or understanding for your understanding of emotional patterns and relationships?
Yes. I was in a very, very abusive relationship.
How old were you?
I was early 20s.
Okay.
And absolutely lost myself. Like, I managed to, I'm going to say it, I escaped this relationship. And it's strange looking back, I really didn't want to leave. I was completely at the end of my tether. I was unwell. I have relatively clear skin. I had developed acne from like all over my face. I was just physically, emotionally just drained, and managed to actually just run. And in the end, while I was out of that relationship, yes, things were getting a little bit better, but I still wasn't quite there. So I actually took myself to therapy. And it was through therapy that, you know, my therapist sort of mentioned, you know, that your partner has very narcissistic traits. I'd never heard of the word narcissist. You know, to me, I was like, well, what's that? And then he would explain trauma bonding, and then he would explain different dynamics and relationship patterns. And you know, for me, it was cognitive dissonance, which is basically I just couldn't quite team up with the fact that the reality was I was living in an absolute nightmare hell, but I just couldn't face that reality. I would just minimize it or rationalize it. And then after that, you know, that process really helped me to heal and move forward. But it was really, that experience was life-changing for me. And I remember thinking, this was years later, like when I decided to study it, I thought, oh my God, you know, that is just so fascinating to me. And that's why, again, I wanted to go and study, because I wanted to be able to help other people who, like me, might be in that situation. And that was kind of it, really.
Well, I'm glad that you've brought us onto that topic, right? Because I think that so many people, including Payman, think that impulse reactions are what dictate the truth. And I have quite a similar journey to you as well. And I don't believe that those feelings, for example, I said that I would never want to lose myself in a way where I compromise my job, what I like, where I live, all of my friends for someone else, because I was almost in that position, almost. And he said, well, you've clearly never been in love. And I was like, no, I've done enough work on myself to know that addiction to the dopamine is something that is self-soothing parts of myself that feel familiar, which is basically chaos.
Yeah.
And that is mistaken for love. And he was like, no, because you drop everything for the person you love. And I'm like, I don't think that's healthy. Someone that comes into your life, and this has happened to me, and I have been so enamored and I feel sick and I can't concentrate at work, and I'm like, do I sack it all off for this person? That isn't love, because once I'm over that situation, I'm like, anything that comes into your life and causes that chaos and makes you lose yourself isn't the definition of love. He disagrees.
Oh, interesting.
Not. I mean, it's more nuanced than that.
It's not. You literally said that.
It's more nuanced than that.
No, I want to hear Stina's view first, and then we'll come back on to you.
It's like a couples counselling session.
Go on. I'd like to hear.
So I actually see a little bit of your point of view, and I obviously very much see yours as well. There is compromise.
Yeah.
So yes, you can't lose yourself, but obviously there is a line of, there will be things that you might have to be a bit more flexible on. I'm not sure what that is, because obviously every person's value and how expectations and where they want to go in life is different. But I think as a couple, you do have to meet in the middle. It can't be like, this is what I want, I'm not changing my career, I'm not doing it, because you're probably going to end up alone. Or you might meet someone that's totally fine with that, and that's great too. But I think depending on each person, there needs to be flexibility. Otherwise, you don't really have a partnership.
I mean, there's love, there's in love, there's falling in love, there's lust. All I was saying to you was falling in love, by definition, is illogical to the point that you would do anything for it. That's all I was saying.
I kind of see what you mean, but I also don't necessarily agree, because I've also done years of therapy and coaching and everything, and I've recognised that notion of, like you said, where you can't eat, sleep, and
It's temporary.
Yeah, it's temporary, but that doesn't necessarily mean that is the person.
Maybe you're wise enough to know that.
But the thing is that and I'm sure Stina's the same, I understood that initial feeling of chaos never worked out for me. Hey, it never worked out for me. So I had to switch it up. So when I started asking the important questions, okay, initial attraction is important, of course, but just because you go on a date and you don't feel like, there is a difference between a charmer and someone that is actually going to be committed to you. You can go on a date and feel that someone's pursuit of you so fervently is like, oh my God, this person is so into me. They could be into you for the night. They could take you away for the weekend. And you could be totally like, wow, this is the love of my life. He's just taken me to Capri, been there, done that for the weekend. He's obviously into me. And then he could disappear. For me, that's not consistency.
And most women sort of don't go for guys who are that much into them, in a way, right?
If they're really into them themselves. No, but if you are very attracted to someone, you've even said that to me, I feel like you're starting to understand, but I don't think that necessarily is the basis for a healthy partnership. And I think that actually someone that makes you feel calm and safe, just because that is not labelled as sexy in society, is something that we should rephrase.
Well, of course. But let's take
absolutely.
Let's take it to the other extreme, where Indians have arranged marriages with someone completely suitable, and you're right, it works often, because the person
does it. I'd like Stina to answer that.
Often it works.
Sometimes it's hard, because it's like, you look at, yes, it can, but there are obviously
issues.
There are obviously case studies where it shows it really doesn't. People are in very abusive, toxic relationships.
But you see what I mean. That what you're suggesting is that it's a very logical process.
I didn't say it's logical. No, what I'm saying is that you do not have to have the feeling where you have to compromise everything you want just because you were impressed by a person. I'm not saying compromise in general. I'm saying initial attraction is important, but what is important to ask all the questions. If I met somebody and over a week, I'm like, he ticks all my boxes. Okay, let's just say for argument's sake. So I look, he's got a sexy career. He's super hot. Okay, 10 out of 10 in looks. He's saying all of the right things. Okay. Yeah. Then after a week, I call you up and I'm like, Stina, he's the one. Okay. And then you're like, okay. And then after a month, I say to you, do you know what? I've decided I'm going to pack my bags. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to move to where he lives. Okay. That was the example I gave you. I'm going to move to where he lives. Okay, I don't have any friends there, but I don't care because I know that he's the one. Cool. Then after 2 months, you decide, I'm going to get pregnant, right? And that's the thing. I would say to you as a friend, because he's just like, well, you've clearly never been in love, like that sort of person. I'm like, No, I would say there is no harm in waiting and asking the right questions.
I'd say the same.
Yes.
I'd say the same.
No, and then that's the whole, because like, you've clearly never been in love to just impulsively
Have you
do
done
that.
Have you impulsively done?
Yeah, exactly.
I thought you were going to say this is my story.
He said that he's had the experience where he couldn't stop thinking about someone for 24/7. So he was, and I get that feeling. We've all had that feeling.
Yeah, totally.
But what I'm saying is, it's important when you do the work, when you truly do the work on yourself, which clearly you are, you're dedicated, you have a degree in this, you understand asking the questions is a really important part of the decision-making process.
Yes. Asking the questions and also taking your time.
Thank you.
Because when we always meet somebody for the first time, right now we are all presenting our best selves, because that's what we do as humans. You know, we want to be liked, we want to be included. This is how we bond and this is how we build our relationships. But obviously, eventually that mask for all of us will slip, you know, and there will be things that you noticed about me that you hadn't noticed before, or there's an annoying habit that I do and you're like, oh my God. And do you know what? Whether that's right or wrong, you have to see it through. You have to see it out and say to yourself, and what I'm trying to say is it just takes time. You can't just run into it. And I think it's so important to be so grounded in the early stages of dating. I would say up to a year, personally.
Thank you.
Personally.
I'd agree.
He's agreeing now. He's agreeing now.
No, I'd agree in that if you came to me with that story, my advice to you would be, you know, wake up. Like,
yes, and I would also question if somebody was doing that, and FYI, I have done that.
Same height, so have I.
I would say, where is that coming from?
Thank you.
It's probably
some sort of deficit within yourself.
It's not the feeling of like, I'm so in love, I do everything for that person. It's coming from a deficit.
It's coming from a lack. So yeah.
But that brings me on to one other important question. So what did your own healing look like then? Because where you went from narcissistic, I obviously understand. Did you find doing the app quite triggering, or did you find it quite healing? Because obviously that was before you'd studied. You already had done therapy, but not psychology, psychotherapy.
Yes.
So for you, where do you feel like there was a real shift? Not a sort of like, I'm great, positive like thoughts.
Honestly, after that abusive relationship, I continued to have many more unhealthy, toxic relationships. It wasn't just one, oh, okay, I now understand that was dangerous. I'm healed, thank God. I'll never look for another narcissist again. Unfortunately for me, because I hadn't done the work myself. I had gone to therapy. I had read many books. I had understood it. I knew all the terms like gaslighting and all this stuff. And you know, I was a red flag spotter. You know, I could see them literally walking down the pavement. But did that stop me from getting into toxic, unhealthy dynamics? No. For many years, even after my very abusive, I'm not trying to scale them all, but after that first experience of an abusive relationship, I was just finding myself in and out of them all the time. And it wasn't until I went and studied. And when you study to become a therapist, a lot of people do not know this. It's not a case of just reading the book and listening. Do your own work. You have to do your own work. So, and it was very intimidating, and I hated every minute of it because you could not hide. And I had tutors and lecturers who would literally hold the mirror up and say, "Are you seeing this? Because this is what you are." And it was just so like, oh. I mean, that is a conversation for another time.
Now, one of my really good friends, she's studying therapy at the moment. We've had her on the podcast, and she's going on, like, she's doing a master's, and then she's going to probably do a PhD. But like, I can see like the huge shift that in her as a person. And like she's like, you don't understand how intense it is. Like the group therapy, the like personal therapy, the like the dealing with like clients as part of your training. Like, she says completely that the mirror is constantly held up.
And the group therapy is so true. You're in like a group therapy setting with your peers and your tutor, and people will come for you. You know, that you might have said something that triggered them, but the idea is you process it together and you have it out. And I never really liked conflict. I was always like quite scared about it. And for me, one of my survival responses is to fawn, is to people please. Bloody hell, like that course taught me not to do that. Have it out, have the difficult conversations. So anyway, it was therapy where I learned, hang on a minute, I've got not only an anxious attachment style, which I knew anyway, but actually I've got a lot of core beliefs about myself. I didn't like myself. I thought I was unlovable. I thought people would always leave. Again, that's from childhood and also experiences, but I had to dig deep and do the work. I can't even remember what your question was.
You know, would you say you or people sometimes project something that then someone like a narcissist can see and then prey on?
Oh yeah.
So what kind of behaviours are they?
This is the thing, because anyone can end up being a victim of an abusive relationship. You know, there's loads of people out there.
You don't even know. I had it terribly with someone I was with. But go on. Mm-hmm. It really can happen to the strongest women. Really? And like
no one is safe, because actually it's, you know, it could be something as simple as you've got a great career and you're confident, and just even the way you walk in a room, they'll latch onto it because they want a bit of that. Or it might be you are a very shy and meek person, and again, they'll latch onto it. I don't think there's just one thing. I think it's just more of how they can kind of worm themselves in, and I think that they can just do that with anyone.
What are the telltale signs? I mean, for someone who might be in a relationship right now who feels something's off in it, what are the telltale signs that you're in a relationship with someone like that? I mean, did firstly sort of pedestal you, give love and take it away?
You've actually said it. It's how you feel in the relationship. So often our bodies tell us before our minds do. Mm-hmm. So when I mentioned when I was in my first abusive relationship, I had acne and eczema, and it was like my body was screaming for me to get out, you know, and I didn't make the connection at all. If I look back, unconsciously I felt uncomfortable with certain things that they did or they said, but I just completely minimized, dismissed it, ignored it, rationalized it, made excuses. But yeah, I think telltale signs are within yourself. You know, that niggle that you feel where you go, I didn't like that. Or, I have a gut intuition that something's not right here. We just tend to ignore ourselves all the time. And it's so frustrating because obviously for me, I've been there. But when I can see people are clearly ignoring their gut.
But I think it's because also like the familiarity piece, like, so I had a
fear of being alone, maybe.
No, not necessarily. I mean, like, for example, I had a really healthy relationship in my 20s. My first boyfriend I met at Leeds. It was interesting because naturally, I think from a very young age, I fancied narcissists. I had my own sort of traumas and insecurities about being Middle Eastern, not being accepted, growing up in a very white public school environment, being the only kind of foreigner. And so like Leeds really perpetuated that. And every time I got rejected by these like archetypal like public school boys, there was this like massive self-worth thing. And then my first boyfriend was like kind of like a rebound, and I was like, okay, like I'll go for this. We ended up being together for like 6 or 7 years. It was, I would say, incredibly healthy, but I think I always still yearned the narcissist because I think that I was so desperate to be seen. Yes. And I think there's a difference also between being a narcissist and having narcissistic tendencies. And what I've learned is that I think that I have narcissistic tendencies just because I like enjoy being in the public eye and things like that. Doesn't make me a bad person. There's some self-awareness. I bring myself down to that. But then I always was really attracted to someone that was like out there in the public, famous, like really sort of, I guess, masculine alpha, like masculine toxicity, what you'd label now. But I then went on to just continuously go after these narcissists. And every time I thought it'd be different. And then one day I looked in the mirror and I was like, this is a me problem. Yeah. And this feeling of feeling sick, not being able to sleep, this feeling it's not normal, but it was just like this familiarity of chaos that I really enjoyed. And it took a lot of time and work because then you start to realize that other qualities are attractive. When I was in a relationship that was very narcissistic, what I realised is the person that I was with pretended to be someone else for 3 months. Then the real him came out and I was like, I thought I knew you. And like, you're so desperate, like you said, to like cling on. And it's just really disorientating because you just don't understand how you've ended up in that situation. So, and I would say, unfortunately, I think social media is providing more and more of a platform for narcissists because by nature, they love being out there and putting themselves out there. And I think the messages that they perpetuate to the audiences reinforces toxicity, especially to a lot of women. Like, I don't know if you're noticing this, because sometimes I'll look at content and I look at the comments from other women and I'm like, you guys are going to be like single forever. Like, I'm not saying that in a patronizing way, but there's this, like, they feel like they're entitled to this like idea of perfectionism that's portrayed online. Do you know what I mean?
I do understand. Yeah.
And I'm like, this is not healthy. It's dangerous.
I think social media is definitely amped our, I mean, we all have narcissistic traits, whether we like to believe it or not. It's again, it's a survival thing. You know, it's, I don't want to call it healthy narcissism, but let's call it that for the podcast. You know, that's our drive. You know, we've got to be successful and stay alive. That's our ego. That's us kind of ramping up every day. Obviously, the unhealthy narcissism is when it's projected onto others and, you know, used in horrible ways. But don't forget, we've also got things like covert narcissists who aren't online. They're everywhere. You know, it's people say, oh, these are the signs of a narcissist, but actually there are different types of narcissists. I think there's about, last I read, it was like 9 versions of different narcissists, and some are very shy, quiet.
What makes a narcissist? Like, is what background, what childhood?
What traits would you say?
Do you know, there's not really an answer for it. It's believed childhood, so childhood trauma. It could just be your personality, but a lot of people believe it's to do with the past and their upbringing and how they feel about themselves, because they're just insecure. And obviously, don't forget, you've got narcissistic personality disorder, which, you know, is a disorder, and then you've obviously got someone that has very high narcissistic traits, and again, that's on a spectrum. But yeah, they're not entirely sure, and it's one of those things where, I don't know if you've seen on TikTok, there are quite, I actually follow a guy called Lee. He is a narcissist, and he talks about sort of his recovery and stuff, because he is apparently in therapy and working on himself. But the thing is, not many people are going to admit that they're a narcissist, are they? So it's not really.
But it's funny because you see, I mean, I'm not going to mention who it is on the podcast, but I went on a date with someone years ago from Raya, and he was like, he's a very prominent public figure. I wouldn't say he's even good looking.
From what?
Raya, it's a dating app. And it's literally the narcissist dating app. And like, he was not even good looking, but I was like, loved him because of all his sort of like talks that he did. Tell you later off record. And when I went on the date, I was like, this guy is actually unbearable and was a narcissist, and everything he portrayed online was nothing like he was in real life. And I was like, this is really interesting for me to observe, because again, and he was so disengaged. And I had a friend of mine who's also a massive podcaster, and she'd also gone on a date with someone that also had a big platform and talked a lot about relationships, and she said like the date was horrendous, and had like the way he was engaging with her was also like horrendous. So I think it's like quite interesting that, you know, people can also say things, but it doesn't actually what they believe.
What trends are you seeing now with dating apps? You know, this sort of and social media, this sort of idea that there's always someone better to.
Yeah, I mean, that's
it's kind of a new phenomenon.
Yeah, totally. It's always thinking that the grass is greener on the other side, and we end up chasing our tails, because actually the reality is it's not.
So true.
And that's what it boils down to again, is that shared value. I think a lot of people just swipe. Oh, they're good looking, and I like their, like you were saying, like the Raya guy, like, I like his talks, I like how he portrays himself online, and we just go into it and then are very disappointed. Because again, it takes time, and actually I think had you met him in person, I think it would be very different, because you get a sense of who he is, how he's being. As much as I appreciate dating apps and obviously started one and see so many benefits to it, there are so many flaws with it as well. You know, I'm quite old fashioned in you know, meeting somebody and actually meeting people through friends and energy. Like, absolutely energy. But actually my partner who I'm with, we knew each other through work. But again, it's like, I think it's I like introducing my friends to other friends and doing a bit of Cilla Black because I think, you know, they're likely to get on because they like me and we probably all have similar interests or, you know, something you know, in common. So
but I'm meeting a lot of guys and girls who are choosing to be single.
I think Gen Z in general, right?
Yeah.
And I think dating apps have a lot to do with that too.
Probably, because you get dating fatigue, dating app fatigue. It's I can't be asked for this. And again, like that constant disappointment, you feel like you're on a treadmill. It's tiring. It's
But do you understand people? Do you understand people who choose to be single?
Listen, I'm going to put my 2 cents into this, and obviously you can agree or disagree or give your advice on it. But I think we're all I think we're the same generation. Yeah. Obviously, you're a little bit older, but in general, our common value or what was instilled to us was very much about like building a family and having kids.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of Gen Z women in particular don't want children either. So the need to settle down is not necessarily on their radar. That's what I think is happening as well. And I think that men, then we have the rise of like young boys not having good mentors, good leaders, because as well they're really disgruntled that women aren't really genuinely interested in them. Do you know what I mean? So I think also like we cannot avoid the fact that a lot of Gen Zers, including lots that I know, and I don't want kids. Do you know what I mean? So there's not that sort of like, okay, I need to find someone, start a family.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just a perspective.
I get that. There's the lack of urgency, isn't there? Because it's like, well, I don't need to settle down. But I think if we take it back to sort of caveman times, we do need to be with people, whether that's friendships, romantically, because again, that's survival, isn't it? It's like when you've got your pack, you're safe. So there's a part of me where I think it's great, and I love this movement of being like single and free and doing what you want to do. But I think, and it's no right or wrong, I'm not saying it's in either way, I'm just saying it's just interesting because ultimately we always need someone, whether that is friendship or romantically. We always need people.
But are you not finding that? I find that there's quite a lot of women, for instance, who when they do want to settle down now can't find anyone.
Well, I'd like to, but I think again, don't come for me, everyone. I do think, like, listen, like I'm a massive kind of female ally. That's how we became friends. I have so many incredible women around me. But some of the things that I'm seeing what women want in men nowadays, I'm like, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like, so like there are things, and this is what I'm saying, like when I see the content, they want a 10 out of 10 looks guy.
They want it all.
They want it all. They want like someone who's 6'5", who's ripped, who's rich, who's kind, who's
finance guy.
But like the thing is like they want all of that. And listen, I think, because I've had this conversation with a girlfriend of mine recently, and I said to her, have high standards. She's like, yeah, but like if girls can bring it all to the table, then so should men. I'm like, I'm not saying don't have high standards. Obviously don't settle for someone that treats you badly. But the thing is, say someone has like 7 out of 10 of the things you want, or 8 out of 10, or they make you feel amazing. Like, are you really not going to go? And that is again the problem with dating apps, because you might say, no, I'm not going to date this guy because he's like 5'8" or whatever. But he actually in real life he could be amazing, and you would have got on with him well in a bar, and that would have gone out the window.
Absolutely.
You just got married. You're not married.
I'm not married. No.
You've never been married.
No, never been married. Yet.
But you know, I think like if marriage is the goal, then kindness should be the like number one by a long way. And looks, I mean,
no, I think attraction is important. But I'm going to ask you something. Why do you think that a lot of people, men and women, don't put kindness up there that often?
I know.
But why do you think that is?
I honestly don't know, because I think because it's such a basic need that they're just like, oh, well,
they're obviously going to be nice.
But actually, no, people are not kind. And people are not respectful, actually, is another thing. It is so funny. I have a very good friend who I said to her, what's your list? Like, and when I ask people that, I'm not saying the 6 foot blue eyes, I'm not saying that, but again, it's to help people look at those values, and I do this with some clients as well. I will sort of say, what's important to you? Like, let's really break it down. And it was so funny. She's like, needs to have a good job, needs to be 6 foot. I said, yeah, okay, that's fine. If that's what you want, that's fine. But how about, loyalty? Oh, I didn't think of that.
Like you said, like reliability, and like now, obviously, that you're pregnant, you realise that like a lot of that stuff matters more than ever.
My God,
the other stuff, like the way you look, probably goes out the window, right? Like
God,
you're like, I don't care. I need someone to just turn up for me, you know.
100%.
Let's talk dentistry. Now, one thing I've noticed in dentistry,
They like to marry each other. Joking.
there is that. There is that. But let's talk about women in dentistry.
Yeah.
Women in dentistry can earn loads of money. They can. If they're successful, they can earn loads of money. And not only dentists, I mean, I see it with hygienists too. Often the woman is the breadwinner. Often, much more often than out in the street. Now, and I think that produces its own set of challenges. And call me old-fashioned, but when a woman earns more than a man, she has to be very careful with that. It should never be brought up, because that's such a like old-fashioned idea of the man as the provider. And I'd bet in dentistry there's a much higher proportion of women who are the primary earner, and it comes with a set of hassles, a set of challenges in a relationship. Have you had any idea around that? Because now women are earning a lot more than
Look,
they
I
used
think
to.
if we're going to talk about successful women, and if you are a successful woman, insecure men are not going to touch you because it taps into all of their insecurities and triggers. But there are healthy men that are totally secure in themselves who will big up their woman and let her fly. Of course,
But from the percentage point of view, because obviously, I mean, I don't know if you've got stats, I don't have stats. Do you think that, again, if successful women are like, I earn X amount, so if a woman, for argument's sake, let's say she earns 100k a year and she wants a man that earns that or more, do you think that they're limiting their pool by a lot because then they also want to be attracted to them, for example, and like be like, oh, their looks? Do you feel that you are narrowing your pool, or do you think it's important to stick to what's important for you?
I would say is it success? Is it money? Or is it drive? Which one is it? Because for me, all my friends used to take the piss out of me and say, oh, you just want a really successful rich man. Actually, no, while that is quite nice, I actually want someone who's driven and that has purpose and that has lust for life and passion. So I think if you can, obviously some people might just say, no, I'm sticking to it and he needs to earn X and okay, fine. But the pool's going to be very small there. But what really truly matters, is it drive? They could be doing any job, but if they were driven and good at it and top of their game and ambitious, is that, maybe
but I
that's
think, again,
enough.
that's like, listen, like I completely relate to you. I've said this online. I'm not ashamed to say it again. I have a man in finance. I decided consciously after my first boyfriend, who was a trust fund kid and didn't have much drive, that I wanted someone more successful than me. Did I narrow the pool? Maybe, but like I did end up with a professional, but I had to give in other aspects. Do you see what I mean? But then it's like his drive, and like now he's getting involved with my business. I was like, I'm so right. Like this was so important to me. And now like it shows even more because it's the way his brain works that I love.
Okay. But look, when we all know relationships where the man is way more successful than the woman, and we all know relationships where the man uses that fact. Like maybe it's in handbags, maybe it's in whatever it is. But those guys are dicks, right? So we all agree on that. Now, when a woman earns more than a man, it's a silly move to bring it up.
You say it's quite understated,
I think it's a silly move to bring it up, but it's an even sillier move. It's an even bigger thing because the man's traditional role is the provider. So if a woman brings it up, and in a deep argument, you could bring that up, right? Now, I know maybe 8-9 couples where the woman's earning more, or I mean, as you say, it's not just about the number, it's about the drive and all of that. And some of them do manage it, but many don't.
In terms of what they're, as in how it makes their the relationship dynamic.
The dynamic.
Like there's resentment, I think.
Right,
Well,
okay.
I think it's a particularly sensitive subject for a man not to be the provider,
Yeah, Maybe it's a sensitive subject for everyone. Money's quite the root of all evil, isn't it?
I think Stina's right. Like, it just depends on what you want and what you value, and maybe because also like you're Iranian as well, that plays into it. Like from a cultural point of view, like I'm not going to mention her, but you know, like there is a very successful dentist who earns a lot more than her husband always has done. They have 3 children, and they made the conscious decision together that he's going to bring up the kids.
Yeah,
They love that dynamic, and he's an amazing dad, and they're really comfortable. It's not the dynamic I want, but that's what she wants, and they had that open conversation. So it's again about like, are you choosing someone, like what matters more to you? I've had friends that have compromised on money because looks is the most important thing to them, sadly, but it's so important for them to be with a guy that looks like a model that they will like happily pay for everything, because that is what, like, again, that wouldn't feed my soul, but that's important to them, and as long as they know they're in that dynamic, it is them. Which also I want to bring on to, because I think it's an important topic to talk about, trauma bonds, because this might be a new term to people. What is a trauma bond, and how do you know if you're in it?
So trauma bond is an emotional attachment which you often see in abusive relationships or toxic patterns, and it basically is formed through intermittent reinforcement. So when you're in an abusive or an unhealthy toxic relationship, it's not always abusive, it's not always toxic, it's not always unhealthy, and that's where it hooks you in, because you get a glimmer of affection or love, or it's peaceful and it's nice, and you think, oh yes, and then all of a sudden it hits you with harm, abuse, lying, or unhealthy behaviors. So it's very unpredictable, and this up and down, these highs and lows, unfortunately that releases dopamine in us, and we can get quite addicted to that sort of cycle, and that's a trauma bond. So you end up just becoming so stuck in it because you can't really see the wood from the trees, and so you just stay in it. It's essentially an emotional attachment.
Can a trauma bond be beneficial to both parties? And I'll tell you why I say that, because I believe I have a friend and that her and her partner are in a trauma bond, but it works both ways, because he's traumatized from his previous relationships, and he was, I would say, kind of abused by his previous like girlfriends and relationships. So he had the narcissistic girlfriend and so forth, and then she also had like a failed marriage, and I feel like they found each other when they were both really lost. So I feel like it's a kind of beneficial trauma bond. Does that make sense? You know, like they really need each other, but is that a contradiction? Like you can't have a positive trauma bond, if that makes sense.
That's just bonding over trauma.
Bonding over trauma.
But a trauma bond is when you're actually in a very unhealthy relationship, and it's that up and down, and I have been in it many times. It's just when you get the good, the highs, oh my God, that sense of relief of like, finally, you know, it's like, they do love me. And then all of a sudden it's taken away from you. And like you said earlier, you will do anything to get back
to where
what you had. I can always tell when a client is in a trauma bond relationship, or is trauma bonded. They will always say to me, when it's good, it's good. But when it's bad, it's bad. And that for me, I'm like, trauma bond.
But why do people mistake chaos for intense love?
Why do people mistake chaos for intense love? Because more often than not, it is to do with what they're used to. So again, if you had a very chaotic or maybe an abusive upbringing or an unpredictable upbringing, then if you're in a relationship that's chaotic, unpredictable, that feels very safe because it's familiar. Also, your own core beliefs, if you think that you're not good enough and you end up in something like that, again, what we were saying about the grass is green, and you just think, well, that's not true, I'm going to stay in this because this is as good as it gets. So we can kind of kid ourselves into thinking, no, this is love, when it's really not.
Okay, I'm going to go on to a little bit of a detour. This is an interesting one for me. You posted something recently, which I really enjoyed, and it said, even ChatGPT is sick about hearing him, babe. Did you see that? It's so funny. And what I'm seeing a lot of from people that I follow online, and also my friends that are psychotherapists, is that people really believe that ChatGPT is better or a replacement as therapy. I would like to know, as a professional, if you believe this is true, what you feel as a therapist about AI when it comes to therapy, whether you think people are hearing the right answers, does it have this? I just want to have a chat about all of that.
Oh my God, this is a long... By the way, I love ChatGPT, and I even use it as a therapist. However, I know what to write as a therapist. So I'm careful in sort of what I input, and I'm also mindful with what it says. And this is where it's an issue, because if you're just saying, help me, and it comes back with very basic and sometimes very good solutions, it's still not taking into account your own experiences, your beliefs, your past, your wounds, your all of it. It's not taking in the bigger picture, because it doesn't know you. You could input it, the data, and yeah, it could probably help here and there. And I think for some things it's amazing. And actually, I think the future when it comes to AI in therapy is it will likely team together. I don't know how, I just think it will. You know, there's plenty of online therapy services now where you can have a therapy session with somebody and the AI will pop up and it will say, oh, he's looking a bit sad today. Maybe point out his body language. You know, I know these things exist and they're amazing. But at the end of the day, the therapeutic relationship between patient and therapist is what makes therapy powerful. It's what helps us to heal. And I don't believe AI is quite there yet, because we need to be with humans. We need to have that human understanding to be seen, to be heard. Yes, AI can give us top lines. Yes, it can give us solutions, but it's not the same as being with a human and sitting.
Not yet, right?
Not yet, yeah. But it might do one day.
Do you think ChatGPT can be dangerous if it's used for therapeutic needs?
Yes, absolutely.
Why?
Oh, completely. Well, you hear all these horror stories where somebody has taken their own life because ChatGPT's told them to.
What?
Yes, it's not that regulated. And I think this is the issue. And that's what I was saying to you, I didn't mean to sound like a know-it-all and I know what to sort of say, because I'm, someone who's incredibly vulnerable. ChatGPT could send them completely down a rabbit hole. And yeah, it can be dangerous, but also depending on the situation, it can be also really great. It can be really beneficial. It can highlight things that you didn't know about yourself or knew what to do. And so I think...
But there are good and bad therapists as well, right?
Oh my God.
So
yes,
it doesn't have to be AI that's the bad therapist.
No, oh my God. When choosing a therapist, make sure they're accredited.
What would you say is the thing that's most important? Would you really literally be the chemistry between you and the therapist?
Yeah, definitely. Always. 9 times out of 10.
Really?
Yeah, the relationship is the most important, because if you don't feel safe with your therapist, you don't feel respected. Or I had a therapy session recently, actually. I was trying out something I had never experienced as a therapist. I booked in this session with this woman. I have never felt so judged. And bearing in mind, she had degrees all up on her wall behind her. She was very well qualified. And she asked me after the 50 minutes, how do you feel? And I bloody told her. And I said, yeah, I did. I said, I feel incredibly judged. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, I'll tell you what I mean. And I laid it out. And the old me would never have done that. But I thought, I'm in the field. And actually, you need to be told, because I get someone more vulnerable who doesn't have the understanding of how therapy works, might have just taken it. I was talking about I used to be a glamour model. And I was talking about that. And she was very disturbed by it, because that was her own biases and her own beliefs. And you know what? That's fine. But leave that outside the door. There's loads of people that I've worked with where I don't agree with things, or, we have completely different beliefs or whatever. But you don't do that as a therapist. There's so many bad therapists out there. It's
I agree.
Quite scary.
I've been through so many. And the problem is really stuck with some for way too long, because I was like, oh, maybe it's just like the way they are, and maybe it's just me. And I was like, oh my God. And then when I found
you knew what it really was.
And then when I found Ella, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah,
this is so easy.
And it's your relationship with her. Yeah.
So,
exactly.
And I think
Stina,
that's important.
modelling, right, is all about the way you look.
Yeah.
Whereas what you're doing now is all about what's in your head.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing, right? That you're doing.
It's the narcissist side of me.
No, but it's a great thing, right? It's a great thing, because when you talk to models, a lot of times they're really frustrated with the fact that the way they look is the only thing anyone's interested in.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, I've found interactions that there's a lot of unhealthy toxicity going on with models.
As in how they are feeling about themselves?
I don't know, maybe the rejection of castings.
Yeah. It's awful.
It's like a tough life.
Oh
really.
my God, yeah.
Because it sounds like such a glamorous life, right?
No, It's horrendous. It's like, I remember going to a casting. I'm quite athletic and like, I've got quite, I've got muscles. And I remember going in and it was 6 men on a bench, on a stand or whatever. And they went, and they're talking about me as if I'm not even in the room. I'm standing as far as I am to you and they're going, her legs are too fat. I was 7 stone.
Yeah.
What? It's just so toxic. And I can laugh at it now, but I went home and I cried. But unfortunately, you do develop this really thick skin. But having said that, I still remember that. I remember how they made me feel. It's really, just so toxic. So toxic. I'm glad to be out of that.
No, completely. So I want to go on a little bit onto self-awareness, right? So have there been moments when you felt like you were losing yourself, and how did you come back from that, even with your new career and your kind of new journey?
Yeah, so many. There's been so many times I've completely lost myself, and unfortunately it has been often to do with relationships and just forgetting kind of my self-worth and what's important to me. And
has that shifted with the baby?
Yes. Oh my God. Do you know, I was saying to my mum the other day, I've always had relatively good boundaries. I communicate for a living, but I'm quite good at sort of putting down my lines. But I would always have this, from being a certified people pleaser back in the day, I always felt guilty sort of putting my boundaries in or communicating. There'd always be a part of me where I go, I know this is right, but I feel a little bit bad about doing it. Whereas now the pregnancy is like, no, that's it, so leave it.
Yeah.
But it's not me being horrible or not flexible. It's just, that's how it's a protection thing of, I'm not just protecting me, I'm protecting somebody else. So this mother instinct overcomes.
I think hormones are massively like downplayed and misunderstood. And I think, again, that's the problem with the medical system. I had a doctor on this podcast that we talked about medical misogyny and how actually it happens all the time, medical gaslighting and medical misogyny. Because if it was men that had to deal with the hormones and what we go through, so much more research would have gone into it. And she's actually a menopause expert. So she said that like such little funding goes towards female hormones. And like you said, like the cycles that women have to go through, premenstrual, with babies, menopause, perimenopause, things change so drastically. And I think it's really important. That has a huge impact on your mental health.
Yes.
I suffer from PMDD, which I become a different person. And I told my therapist, and I was like, I honestly become upset and suicidal and sad. And then like as soon as my period starts, I feel better. Are you seeing more people recognizing as well that PMDD is a massive part of their mental health journey?
I'm seeing that everywhere, even in personal trainers. They're really taking in our sort of cycle a bit more important, because when you're ovulating, I think that's what the can never say the word follicular. Thank you. Get my words out. So there's a much better understanding now, because for years it was kind of like, well, get on with it, for sure. You definitely have to take in. And again, this is something else that AI couldn't probably do unless you told it. Again, it's about inputting the right data. You have to take the person as everything, from spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically. So much that plays into who we are and what we think.
And if you are somebody that suffers with hormonal imbalances and PMDD, what would you suggest?
For just in general,
to deal with that?
Self-care, always first. And obviously talk to your GP and make sure, there's things that there might be some things that they can give you or help you with, but self-care first always.
Are you pro or against people taking medication like antidepressants?
I am. If you want to do it, I'm pro it. Yeah, I think I have nothing against it, because I've seen people, again, have their lives changed just by simply taking a tablet. And I think that's much better than sitting at home all day crying yourself to sleep, in my opinion.
Do you think that it's important for people to take medication and have it alongside talking therapy?
Yeah, definitely. And again, and exercise. So there's an amazing book, you've probably heard of it, called The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah. Have you read it, Pay?
No, but you mentioned it.
Oh,
Yeah.
you must read it. It's
I'll buy it for you,
fantastic.
if
It's
you're nice.
brilliant. And he found that even talking therapy isn't enough. We have to do yoga. They actually found yoga was one of the best things you can do alongside talking therapy. So it's, how I look at it is it's like a pie, like a little pie, and there's different sections. You need to have, or a better metaphor is a chair. You know, if you've got one leg that's broken and you're feeling a bit wobbly, we all need each area of our life sturdy and stable. You can't just rely on one leg or one thing like therapy. So yeah, always combination. I'll always say to the client, you know, let's talk about your self-care. What are you doing? Everyone rolls their eyes like, oh bloody hell, how's your sleep? You know, and you work out, oh, actually they've only had 2 hours of sleep in this whole week. No wonder they're emotionally up and down.
Yeah, sleep is so important.
So important.
In relationships, do you break them down into a few types, or are they really all as nuanced as we like to think?
Do you mean a diagnosis? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, when people come to you with relationship issues,
Yeah.
are they like 6 basic types and that's it, or is it
No.
like 600?
6 million.
Really?
Yeah, because this is the thing, like people always say to me, like, oh, your own experiences, which, you know, my abusive relationships and I've grown up with a disabled brother, and, you know, all these things that we've gone through in our lives, of course, make us human and give us the wisdom and blah, 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 blah. But, and yes, it's given me empathy and it's flexed that muscle and all the rest of it. But actually my experiences will never be yours or yours. And you know, you might have someone come in who's in an abusive relationship and you know the signs but actually it's just different every time, even though it might have similarities, and you go, okay, yes, this is, we know what we're dealing with.
So is it like detective work where you're like kind of trying to work out where it's all coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. Because...
And do you deal with couples at the same time?
Yeah.
So tell me about that. What happens when
Couples.
a couple comes and I don't know, what are the classic situations?
Could be
Sexless
anything.
marriage? Or,
yeah, it can be anything.
where do you start?
I mean, how long have we got? It's so... I do something, I'm an integrative therapist, so I bring in different styles and approaches into my session. And for the first, I would say 2 or 3 sessions, I'm very person-centered. So I allow them or whoever I'm speaking with to tell me exactly what they're thinking, feeling, and eventually as our relationship builds together, might start bringing in different sort of techniques. That might be CBT, so it might be Socratic questioning where I'll sort of highlight things. It might be somatic work, so it's like, where do you feel that in your body? It might be psychodynamic, where tell me where you've noticed that pattern before. It's probably something to do with their childhood. There's so many different ways you can take it. But I would say in the sort of when I'm building my relationship and trying to understand my client, I am a detective, I guess, because I'm sitting and I'm taking it all in and absorbing it and trying to sort of work out where are we going. But often or not, you think it's going to go one way because you just do. You think, okay, I think this is what's going to happen. And then they take it the other way. And you're like, oh, okay. So you have to be quite fluid as well as a therapist to just be like, the client has to lead you. It's not me being directive at all. So yeah, it's different with everybody, every single person. And I always learn from the client, always learn. Every day I walk away and I'm like, God, didn't think that was going to happen, or something quite profound or touching happened.
That's why I think everyone in medicine and dentistry has to be like that. I think this directive approach is not what patients want. Like, you can't tell the patient, I would do this, you need to do this. Like, obviously, like, you know, if you have to deal with disease, fine, like perio and caries. But, you know, like now, especially like with the cosmetic dentistry, you need to listen. Patients take offense when you're like, I do this, why is your tooth twisted? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is why like people come to me for my consultation like, oh, I love the way you like, you know, embrace this and you do this and not one case is the same. You know what I mean? Like this prescriptive approach, I just think is not working.
No, I agree with you.
So for anyone who is struggling at the moment, apart from getting on ChatGPT, what
Have you done it?
What?
ChatGPT.
Oh yeah, I talk to ChatGPT all the time as a friend.
therapist.
As a friend. Yeah, kind of like as a friend therapist. As in like, my friends have said it to me a million times, so I just like need to have that like advice almost reinforced because I
The
wake up...
free one or the paid one?
Paid.
Yeah.
Odds. But I do find it quite disturbing how some of my friends have said like they don't need therapy and they can just sit and just stay in on a night in and just chat to ChatGPT for hours. Do you know what I mean? And these are like really amazing people that I know. So I thought it was an interesting conversation. Yeah. But for those that are struggling and haven't embarked on a journey of self-discovery or feel that their patterns are constantly repeating themselves, their life is not getting any better, whether that's love, career, friendships, etc., what would be your advice? Some simple steps to take to sort of discover how you can make your life better?
Obviously I'm biased, but therapy. Go to a therapist. Yes, ChatGPT. In the interim, you're allowed to use it, but talking to somebody is 100% the first step. Because when you're stuck, even when you're typing into ChatGPT the situation, you're actually stuck. You're not thinking outside. But when you're talking to a human, they can, bounce off. We've already gone through this, but bounce off sort of different ideas and everything. But I think if you're aware of a pattern, that's also a very good sign. Because if you like, hang on a minute, okay, keep attracting red flags, that's awareness, that's good. So that's the first step as well. You
don't keep chasing the high just because it feels like love. Yeah. Okay, go on.
So having that awareness is a good first step as well. And looking in that mirror. And I think really you can only really do that in therapy, and looking at the patterns. Where does that come from? Why? How do you feel about that? What do you believe? Like, who's saying that thought, that negative thought? Is it little Rhona? Is it 20-year-old Rhona? Do you know what I mean? It's like you can break that down, and I mean, again, how long have you got? You can go so many different ways with therapy. I love it.
Amazing.
I tell it to ask me 20 questions.
Ask you 20 questions, okay, and then it gets to know you.
Get to know me, and I find that in whatever the situation is, not necessarily like in a therapy situation.
Yeah, the thing is though, with ChatGPT, it's not conscious. It's not human. Exactly, and it's very basic.
I'm talking about, for instance, customer experience. Yeah, to act as a customer experience expert.
That's work.
Ask
You're
me
not
20
asking
questions about my business.
Yeah, fine. Business-wise, but I don't.
It's the same thing with that. Same thing with.
Yeah, but I think business versus mental health is two different things, because business is about data as well, whereas mental health, you can extrapolate things from data, but every human being is hugely complex. It's like getting a machine to do veneers. You're never going to get the same result with handmade. On that note, Stina, how can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok. My name, Stina Sanders.
Thank you so much. And if people do want to look up sessions with you, or to do any therapy or coaching,
so I actually have a website in the making as it stands, but you can just go on my Instagram or TikTok and join a waiting list, because I am opening up my clinic next month.
Amazing. And that will be with Baby Bump.
Majority is online, believe it or not.
Really?
But my clinic will be in Soho, London.
Oh, so you'll have a physical site as well.
Thank you so much, Stina. That was incredible.
Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.